Hi, and welcome back to the Tom Morgan Drum Studio. Hopefully you've been following along through the book that I've written that I'm basing these videos on. It's called, again, The Sequential Approach to Fundamental Snare Drum, and you can find it at C. Allen Publications, their website. You can also find it on steveweissmusic.com. Or hopefully you can find it at your local music store or drum shop. And of course, I encourage everyone to patronize their local businesses and their local music stores because that really helps them out. If they don't have it, you can ask them to order it. And that's a good way to go. But if you want it super fast, if you don't have it available, obviously you can order it online. All right, so today we're on page 19. And on page 19, we introduce the eighth rest. So I've made a high-tech board here that we can use to just talk about this. Again, if you don't have the book, it's going to be difficult for you to get much out of these videos. So again, I encourage you to get the book. But on page 19, we introduce the eighth rest, which is right here. Okay, now if you have the book and you look at the way things are arranged there, you'll notice that each line, there's 9 lines, and they're all essentially the same. They follow the same pattern. The eighths, either notes or rests, are falling in the same place in each measure of each line. So what I'm trying to get you to understand here is that when you read music, you don't want to look at every individual note any more than if you were, say, reading a novel, you would look at every individual letter of every word. I mean, you obviously couldn't do that. It would take you forever to read anything, and it would be incredibly tedious. So the way these notes are beamed, and as we'll see as we go through the book, the way all notes are beamed in modern notation is to help you picture what I call rhythmic words, combinations of notes that you see as a group, just like you see combinations of letters in a word in a group. So one very common combination of eighth notes is 4 eighth notes beamed together. It would look a lot different if each one of these eighth notes was written with a little flag. It would take a lot longer to write it if you were writing by hand, but it would also be harder for your eye to pick out how many eighth notes were there, especially if you had 4 more eighth notes in the rest of the measure. So this way, when they're beamed together, you see, your eye just pictures it and knows, oh, it's 1 and 2 and, or 3 and 4 and in this case, because we're in 4/4 time and there's only 4 counts in a measure. Now remember, the eighth note gets a half a count, and so the eighth rest also gets a half a count. And just to remind you, we've defined a count as a number and an and. The time it takes you to say 1 and, 2 and, a number and an and. So quarter notes get a number and an and, 1 count. Well, eighth notes get a half a count, a number or an and. 1 and, 2 and. Okay? And eighth rests are the same. They get a half a count. So what I'm trying to get across on page 19 is that if we substitute an eighth rest for any one of these 4 eighth notes, it's still going to be either 1 and 2 and or 3 and 4 and in this case. Okay, now if we change time signatures and those kinds of things, that will change. But for now, just getting used to reading and seeing where the eighth note pops in. I put a couple of them down here, 3 of them. Here the eighth note is just substituting for the first, or the eighth rest is substituting for the first eighth note of the 4 eighth note pattern. Here it is substituting for the second eighth note of the 4 eighth note pattern. And here it is substituting for the third. And if I had room, I could have done one more and had it substituting for the 4th. Okay, and also you'll notice that like on measure, or on line 6 here, I have 2 eighth rests substituting for the first and third eighth note in the 4/8 note group. And on 7, I've got the other two, the and of 2 and the and of, the and of 1 and the and of 2, which are rests there, but it's still a 4/8 note or eighth pattern. Then on line 8, they're in the two middle ones, and the outside ones are still notes. And then on 9, we have the two outside ones as rests and the two middle ones as notes. So as you train your eye to see these groups of 4/8 notes in various combinations with rests substituted for notes, as you do that, hopefully that'll become something that you just instantaneously recognize. Just like you instantaneously recognize words that you've learned, and you do that by just seeing the shapes and combinations of the letters as a group rather than seeing them as individual letters. Okay? So, there's really not much. I'll play certain ones of these. I'm not going to go through all 9 of them, but you get the idea. And I want you to practice these and count out loud as you do it. Counting out loud is one of the great privileges we have as drummers because, playing our instrument doesn't involve blowing air out of our mouth. So if you're a trumpet player, you can't count out loud unless you clap rhythms or something. But we can do it. And so that's a great advantage to us. Counting out loud, if you do that, you are sure that you really understand how to apply counting to the notes. So let me play line 1, 4/4 time. I'll count it off in a measure first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now notice we did throw in a half note there just to remind you they get 2 counts. And we threw in a quarter rest too, which gets 1 count, just like a quarter note. Okay, now if we move down to line 2, we'll see that it's really just like line 1, except that all the 4/8 note patterns have an 8th rest at the beginning of them, substituting for the first note of the 4/8 note pattern. So I'll play line 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? If we drop down to line 3, we've just moved the 8th note over 1/2 a count. So now it's the same pattern, but now the 8th rest is coming on the and of 1. So we move the 8th rest over 1/2 a count. So, or it could fall on the and of 3, depending on where the 4/8 group falls in the measure. So let me play line 3. 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and. Okay, so line 4 moves the 8th rest over another 1/2 a count. Line 5 moves it over yet another 1/2 a count. So now it's at the last note of the 4/8 pattern. I'll play number 6. Number 6 has 2 8th rests on the first and third 8th of the 4/8 note group. So it sounds like this: 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and number 7 reverses that. Now it's on the 2nd and 4th 8th part of the 4/8 note group. So it's on, in this case, either the end of 1 or the end of 2, or the end of 3 and the end of 4, depending on where the 4/8 group falls in the measure. So here is line 7, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and with line 7 we discover that on a drum pad or a snare drum, a quarter note sounds exactly the same as an eighth note with an eighth rest after it. Now if you were playing a melodic instrument or an instrument that can sustain, the quarter note would last for a whole count. Ta. Whereas the eighth note with an eighth rest following it would just be a half a count. Ta, half as long. But since we're playing on a drum pad and that's all we got, you know, that's our sound. We hold it in a sense for 4 counts, or we hold or for 1 count, we hold the half note for 2 counts, 1 and 2 and when we get to it. So just remember that you're sustaining. Now when we start to add rolls, then we will be able to sustain, and this will make more sense. All right, so be sure you really absorb everything that's on page 19, because in our next video we'll go on and on page 20 we'll start to mix these patterns up in different combinations, and pretty soon we'll be adding more notes like half notes and whole notes back in and their rests, and so we'll kind of bring everything together with all the notes and rests you've learned to that point. So let me just again say, if you like this video, please like it, and if you haven't subscribed, I really ask you to subscribe and come back and watch more videos. If you have friends that are drummers or studying drums, maybe in your school, and you want to tell them about this website or this channel, please do so. Really trying to spread the word about it, and you know, any subscriptions are a great help to the channel. So, all right, and we'll just leave it there for now, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.